Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Definition, and John Krasinski is back as Jack Ryan in the second season of the Amazon show. Throughout this video I'm going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about the new release, as well as what happens at the end and where it could lead. There will be heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't had a chance to watch Jack Ryan yet and don't want to know what happens, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. With that out of the way, I just want to give a huge thank you for clicking this video. Now let's get into our breakdown of Jack Ryan Season 2. Season 1 of Jack Ryan followed the titular character tracking down a terrorist known as the Seuliman, a villain that was thought to be the next Bin Laden. Though Ryan managed to stop him, it was due to underhanded tactics, and it was clear that the shadow recruit was becoming more involved in the darker side of special ops. In the end, Ryan was promoted to the head of TFED, and his colleague, Officer Greer, was relocated to Russia. Season 2 begins in the South China Sea, with a missile being launched that contains an unregistered satellite, and it elevates exponentially from there. The second season takes a real turn early on by not painting out the villains as Russia, China, or even South Korea, but instead by saying that the threat that we should be worried about is Venezuela. Look, yeah, I didn't believe it either. Whilst initially you and the characters might scoff and think that the country isn't even worth paying attention to, this pretty much sums up the entire second season of Jack Ryan, and all of the characters involved have to fly under the radar throughout in order to not bring attention to their operations or tactics. Senator Mitchell Chapin eventually ends up allowing Ryan to go, but it's clear he's not pleased with the turn of events. No one wants to upset the Venezuelan government due to their relationship already being on a knife's edge, and there's a real sense of the characters having to operate in the shadows in order to bring things to the light. The plot this time doesn't really revolve around stopping a terrorist or defusing a ticking time bomb, and instead Season 2 sees Ryan getting involved in an election that will topple the government, something that the CIA have been accused of in the past. It's quite a smart move, and whilst initially it was theorized that the second season would follow the events of Sum of All Fears, the 8-episode run pushes in a different direction that, due to its nature, feels unpredictable. TV shows and movies are just so full of the same situations involving the same countries, and this is a refreshing take that massively grants the show with a side that we don't often see. Ryan himself also starts the season vastly different to how he was in the first run, and he begins as a lecturer teaching foreign policy to aspiring agents. However, he has been monitoring Venezuela, and after bringing it to the attention of his superiors that he believes Russia is selling weapons to the country, he is tasked with moving in to investigate further. Under the cover of diplomacy, Ryan visits the country and sees just how poverty-stricken it is. What it does is push the narrative that the government there is indeed greedy and neglects its people. This not only gets you invested in the plight of the people, but also the narrative of the show, which is taking those in power down. Mirroring this investigation is Greer, who has also been monitoring the movements of Venezuela, and he's quickly thrown back into the mix with Jack as the two work together to take down the dictatorship in the country. Season 2 definitely feels more focused than the prior entry, and it doesn't mess about. I'm looking at you, drone pilot subplot. This is a very focused run, and it gets you more invested in Ryan, who feels like a fully fleshed out character this time that Krasinski has been allowed to make his own. Previously I feel like he had to conform to the traditional depictions, but here he gets more free range. The subject matter at hand also provides a comment on modern day politics, and in the same way that Russia is rumoured to have been involved in the most recent US elections, there's a real sense to the piece as to whether Ryan should really be doing all of this, or if governments should just mind their own business. They end up backing the dictator President Reyes' political rival, Gloria Bernalde, someone that wants to bring democracy to the country and provide a quote-unquote honest election. As an audience member, I was really left to question if this was actually an honest election, and the show does a great job of reminding us that politics is, well, always going to be politics. Whilst Reyes is clearly a bad guy, there are also additional villains such as an assassin played by Tom Waskaliska. I've definitely just butchered his name, so I'm very sorry. Now, you might remember him from Game of Thrones, in which he played the Faceless Man, and similar to that portrayal, he brings a real air of intelligence and darkness with him. Tom Waskaliska? I'll stop it. The guy just seems like he was born to play assassins like this, and he does an incredible job of providing an understated foe for Ryan to go up against. I always felt like the Seuliman stole the limelight a bit in the first season, but this time round all of the villains of the piece balance Ryan, complementing him instead of detracting. In the first episode, he launches an attack against Ryan and co, and it's a really enthralling scene that feels like it was ripped straight out of a Bourne movie. The assassin perfectly paints himself out as a real threat, and it lets you know that Venezuela is definitely worth keeping a closer eye on. Jack loses an ally early on and really has to get his head in the game for the season, which is more underhanded than the prior entry. Reyes denies orchestrating the attack, and after being allowed to remain in the country due to the wake of it, Jack infiltrates a jungle compound with a special ops team headed up by Matisse. It's one of the high points of the season, and it's here that Ryan discovers chemicals and they end up losing a soldier behind enemy lines, which ends up being a great subplot that's tense and feels like an enthralling way to take the show. It's also at this point that he comes face to face with a mercenary played by the Mummy, and this ties into the ending of the series. It gradually escalates as the show goes on, and it has flashes of the film Lone Survivor, which definitely is not a bad thing. Ryan takes a trip to London and manages to catch up with the assassin, who is killed by a spy played wonderfully by Noomi Rapace, and upon returning to Venezuela, Reyes captures both Jack and Greer, revealing that he knows who they are. He accuses the US government of tampering in the election, and when it looks like Benalde has a real chance of taking down his regime, the villain really begins to play his hand. The US embassy is bombarded with mobs and evacuated, leading Greer and Ryan to defy orders and go off the grid. Reyes calls a snap election and Greer is betrayed and captured. Enlisting the help of Chief of the CIA in Venezuela, Mike November, Jack does whatever it takes to get his friend back. He returns to the jungle camp that he infiltrated earlier in the show and recruits the mercs from there in order to rescue Greer and other political prisoners from a camp located deep in the jungle. Reyes orders for them to be executed after America brings down one of the country's unregistered satellites, and Ryan and co move on the soldiers mid-execution at the camp, but they discover that Greer has been relocated to the presidential house as rioting in the capital intensifies. Here they find Matisse's body, who was killed earlier in the season, and things really heat up. It leads to a great finale that clearly has desperation on both sides, with the president on the back foot and Jack at his wit's end trying to bring a close to the conflict without completely destabilizing the country. Reyes is a really cutthroat man, literally, and he kills his right hand and also fixes the results of the polls in order to retain power. Jack leaks images of executions in the camps to news sites, and this ends up leading the people of the country to turn on their government. Jack and Mike head to the residence to get Greer personally, and they go Rainbow Six on these punks, and yeah, it doesn't disappoint. There's a real closing of the loop here, with the special ops team getting revenge for Matisse and Ryan taking on the president himself. However, Mike stops him from killing the country's leader at the last second due to the political ramifications that it would carry. In the end though, the people of Venezuela storm the president's home, and Benalde is officially elected after the results of the democratic vote are revealed, which gives some hope that Venezuela finally has a chance. They reunite her with her husband, who was a political prisoner and one of Reyes' captives. This leaves Jack and Greer to return to the US, with the latter announcing that he is stepping down from fieldwork. The season has a real toll on the character, but in the end he decides to take a step back. Now, whether he will remain in this position or not is up for debate, but if we look at the source material, Greer eventually gets promoted to the position of Deputy Director of the CIA, and I can imagine that in the third season, this is where the character will progress to. He obviously has a close friendship with Jack, and this will help to improve the access to equipment that the character has in the future. Jack returns to Washington, stating that, though they got Reyes, he thinks that they missed something. When investigating Reyes' shell company, Cinco Palmas, they discover that he only owned half of the company, and the other half was owned by an American associate. Ryan reveals that he has tracked everything back to Senator Seuliman, and Seuliman deliberately funded Venezuela due to a fear of China overtaking the US if they have less competition, and thus he has been providing them in order to build their government and give America an ally should things come to it. Seuliman states that if he sweeps this under the rug that Ryan will be able to run for Congress, but Ryan declines it and walks away into a future where there's one less corrupt soul in the government and one more good one in a country that sorely needs it. But what did I think of the season overall? Well, Jack Ryan indeed builds upon the first season in many interesting ways, toning things back slightly, simplifying the narrative, and therefore making for a far more engaging story. This feels like the season that the first one should have been, and they get many elements, including Jack's depiction, right this time round. There's action, drama, and a two-sided nature to the narrative that perfectly reflects the society that we live in by having the characters operate in shades of grey instead of black and white. Amazon also filmed the entire show in Ultra HD with HDR that has been given to all Prime members without the need to pay extra like how you do on Netflix. This allows the show to look incredible, and there's a skydive scene in the 3rd episode over the coast of Venezuela that looks absolutely stunning. With it being a relatively quiet weekend at the cinema and not much else on Netflix, I definitely recommend that you check this out this weekend, as at just 8 episodes it's a really easy watch that provides a fun time for the viewer. This delivers exactly what I wanted from Jack Ryan, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jack Ryan Season 2 and what you took from the show. What do you hope to see next time, and do you agree with my score? Comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video then please give it a thumbs up, and make sure you check out my breakdown of this weekend's other big release, Dr. Sleep, which will be linked at the end. I go over everything that you need to know about the film as well as its ending, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. If you want to come chat to me after the video, then make sure you follow me on Twitter at DefinitionYT, or head over to my Discord server, which will be linked in the description below. Those are the best ways to keep up to date with all the latest videos on the channel, so hopefully I see you over there very soon. We're also giving away a free copy of the Marvel Phase 3 Part 1 box set on Blu-ray, which contains Civil War, Doctor Strange, Homecoming and Ragnarok, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts on Jack Ryan in the comments section below. The winner is going to be chosen on the 15th of November, and the set will be shipped out from then to whoever gets the prize, so best of luck to everyone who takes part. This is a channel for people who are never missing television, so if that's the kind of thing you like, you need to subscribe to Definition. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.